One of the best ways in which the CNTs and these things can be exploited is by something called, okay, so the nano reinforcements or nano composites. There, the idea is like, okay, you can imagine very simple. It's like you have two kids, and for argument's sake, they're quarreling with each other, or there is a poor compatibility. Then you are standing in between, you are holding through one hand, you are holding one of them, and another hand you are holding. Then you are telling them like, okay, so you see now the way you get improved strength when you are together. So but for that, okay, so the material you are adding should be compared. That means you are standing in between. On your right side you have something, on left side you have something. Okay, so now you have to be compatible with respect to both of them, especially in the composite terminology. You have something called a fiber which provides the stiffness and strength. It's like a concrete. You can imagine that, okay, in concrete, you are laying the iron rods. These are like the fibers. Okay, so then you have the matrix which binds. Okay, matrix is nothing but your cement in the case of concrete. So now the nano reinforcement, whatever you are adding, that sits in between both of them. Okay, so that one side it has to be compatible with respect to the fiber part. On another side, it has to be compatible with respect to the matrix part. Even without an additional reinforcement, you have materials. Then you have natural as well as synthetic materials. So the load-bearing material is basically now the, like the iron rod in the case of concrete, and the most of these cases, okay, is in the case of advanced composite applications like aerospace, armor, these kind of applications. What you have is the fiber, carbon fiber or glass fiber. So you have several composites. Okay, so the natural like wood, okay, because it's a cellulose-based one. Then is a lignin matrix. You have animal body, which is a bone, and you have bone itself is actually kind of inorganic organic component. But if when you come to the synthetic composites, okay, so you have concrete as well as okay, carbon epoxy, and considering the strength, like the specific strength, whenever you are looking at the way it is shown here, if you look at concrete, okay, because it's so heavy, and this is actually up to only 5 kilonewton meter. But when you compare to that, if you look at stainless steel, it is better. But if you look at carbon epoxy, and imagine that the flight being taking off, okay, so imagine if it is totally made up of stainless steel body, I think then the most of the fuel will be used only for lifting the aircraft. But imagine the fibers, okay, so the especially carbon epoxy or carbon fibers, they provide very high, the composite materials have certain advantage because they're corrosion resistant first part. Okay, so the erosion which the plane has to undergo, all these things and very high impact strength. Okay, so these things are beneficial for the composites, especially if you look at the composites, the ways to classify them is like depending on the matrix you have, you can classify them. This is polymer composites. Okay, you have ceramic composites and you have metal-based composites. And if you look at among these things, I think mostly for the DRDO or this kind of defense, this kind of applications, you can actually go with the mostly people use polymeric composites, polymer matrix composites. Okay, so because they can be processed within up to 300. Okay, your curing temperatures are not very high in this case. So then the advantage is they're very lightweight. Okay, so the way it was shown, okay, so they are very lightweight. And if you especially look at carbon-based, okay, carbon fiber reinforced epoxy composites are widely used in the aerospace applications. Whereas the glass fiber people use as well as aerospace as well as the armor applications. Armor tanks, whatever you have, or even the bulletproof, whatever you have. I think so. These are the kind of things which you need to carry it with your hand sometimes. So, if you especially if you look at the missiles, okay, so these are the parts which are made up of, the composites, and you can imagine that up to 80% of the composite is, the frames are made up of the composites. Then one has to simply ask a question, why do we need? Okay, so this is what I was trying to tell you. There is a matrix and there is a fiber. Imagine that in your concrete, okay, so this is your iron bar, and this is your the cement, whatever you are putting, and you are actually doing some kind of a binders you are adding, some kind of additives you are adding, so that you increase the compatibility between them. And imagine as such there is a compatibility between them that gives you some strength. But now what you can do, actually you can add the reinforcement. The additional reinforcement, one side it is compatible with your matrix, another side it is compatible with your fiber. That way it complements now the strength of both of them. And without this also, people realize that there are composites, okay, so especially you have composites available like in this fashion. But with the discovery of especially CNTs or nano clays, and here you have a lot of advantage, because as since all of many of your engineers, as a rule of mixtures, okay, you can follow how much to be added. It cannot be more than 1 gram, 1%, even 0.5% sometimes. But that gives you sufficient strength, because it disperses between them, and it is compatible, so that now the resulting strength is going to be more than the individual strength. That's how the nano composites, especially this is a proprietary thing for DRDO applications, especially in India. I mean, you can simply you can contribute to how do you improve it, so that one main problem which people face is whatever you are adding, argument say CNF, CNT, clay, first of all, it is poor compatible. Second part is it doesn't even disperse, okay, because it forms like a bundles, okay, so you need to ensure that there is a proper dispersion taking place. So these things you can ensure so that the results can be realized, okay, so you don't have to, yeah. Especially this slide, I told you that, okay, this morning nanotechnology offers. With the advantages of nanotechnology, people started using it, especially the carbon is kind of a boon for these kind of applications. Especially if you look at in this case, this is a graphite and you cannot use it unless you separate these layers. But the diamond is anyway a useless thing, okay, so except for the value it has, it doesn't contribute any value. But now you look at now these layers are kind of a loose layers. Now the way you fold it, okay, so the way you do the processing, you can also do foliation for the graphite layers, so that you can delaminate them, you can exfoliate them, and you can use it as compatible to this one, because the fiber is normally compatible with carbon, because carbon fiber has to be compatible with carbon. So that's the reason why natural compatibility will be there. But the main problem with this kind of reinforcement, it is not compatible with epoxy. Because epoxy is an organic part, and okay, so this is basically inorganic, so it doesn't it's not compatible. So the new dimension in one of the scientific areas is especially a composite science and technology. So there you can do the reinforcement in the form of, say, it can be a carbon nanotube, it can be a carbon fiber, or it can be microcarbon. Okay, so that means that, okay, so it's actually dimensions are kind of say for example, this is actually a nano size, this is in the micron size, okay, so in between you also have carbon fibers. So it depends on, okay, so the way the sheet is rolled to get a single wall. So this is a single walled, this goes to multi-walled. At one point there will not be any crystallographic arrangement, then this takes you to something like a carbon fiber. Then if you keep on doing it, then you end up with the carbon fiber, because you see that here in this case the diameter is compatible, it's a good diameter. But if you look at here, the diameter is very small, okay, so but the tube is more, but the pore is very small. Once you come to the cup and stack arrangement of the carbon fibers, this is kind of highly amorphous, okay, so there is no big crystallographic carbon in this case. When you come to carbon fibers, okay, these are not crystalline, and the way the composites were earlier made, okay, or the main matrix in your carbon fibers is basically this is your, okay, so you have a load bearing material, this is what the load bearing material, then the matrix will be epoxy in most of the cases, okay, this is a fiber part. Then in these cases, the nano carbon, nano filamentous, as I said that I'm not going to talk on CNTs, because as I saw a dedicated whole day for CNT session, I think he will be able to cover, but I will be using carbon and I will tell you how to modify it. Okay, Dr. Dubey, I think there are several people in the waiting room, you may approve them. Okay, so
Yes.
the nano tubes, okay, so the way you have, this is, sorry?
Nothing, sir. Please go.
The way this is actually, if you look at now, this is single wall, and you have these are the multi-wall nanotubes, and these layers now you can do functionalization, you can do carbonization, you can remove the metallic impurities. There are several ways you can purify these materials. So then when it comes to the fibers, okay, so then the fibers you have are they are like amorphous carbon or pyrolytic carbon deposit. Okay, so under those conditions, now you can actually see that at one point you don't feel like there is kind of a pore which is present between them. That is one thing. Main advantage with this carbon is they are highly compatible with any carbon matrix. They have very strong mechanical strength. Okay, so they have very high mechanical resistance. Then you also have, in addition to this mechanical strength, you also have good thermal conductivity. They have very high thermal conductivity. And then the third part you have is like they have reasonable electrical conductivity, especially if you come to the CNTs and the CNFs to some extent, they are conductive. But I think fibers are not very greatly conductive, especially carbon fiber, it is not very great conductive. So you need to, I mean, especially if you say final, carbon may be conductive, but finally the composite is an insulating one. This is also sometimes a problem, especially one of the DRDO problems which we did in our lab is basically how to dissipate the static charge. Okay, there is normally a static charge which is present. How do you now dissipate the static charge? So you can also improve little bit conductivity by some means. I will show you. Then one advantage is carbon is a very good support, especially those who work in chemical chemistry, these kind of material science aspects, they find carbon is a very good support. Okay, so especially the very good interaction with the noble metals. Okay, so it has a very, then it's also an excellent catalyst support. Okay, so people who work on catalysis, I think palladium and carbon is actually a known material for ages together. Okay, so that means you look at now, you can also differentiate in terms of diameter. And if you look at CNTs, okay, you call them like a tubes as long as you have a reasonable pore diameter. Okay, so then if the diameter is so high, then you don't even worry about the pore. You see that here this pore is negligible compared to the diameter of the tube. Under those conditions, you basically call them like a fiber. And just a coincidence to answer to one of the questions raised by one of these attendants. This is actually normally in the laboratories. Okay, this is my own lab setup. Okay, so you can actually do a simple chemical vapor deposition. I can actually do up to tens of grams with the setups we have. I think you need to have just mass flow controllers. Okay, so then the way you are choosing a hydrocarbon precursor, that matters the quality. If I'm choosing, say, this is an alkane, this then one quality will be there. Instead of an alkane, if I choose alkene, then I may get a different, kind of a quality. So one thing what you need basically is like, okay, you need a hydrocarbon source. In this case, we are depositing carbon. Like you can have anything. You can have a glass plate, you can have a metallic plate, or anything you have. So then on that you can deposit. Okay, so this one, especially in this case, we put it on a metal filter. Okay, so you have a metal filter on that you are growing carbon. So that's through chemical vapor deposition. So then you have the hydrocarbon. Then you actually end up with kind of, like the way in which you do these things are basically you have a hydrocarbon source, and to that you are now decomposing at a higher temperature. Once you decompose at a higher temperature, okay, so then the advantage is like, okay, carbon alone get deposited. The way the process goes, you have, see, like normally for doing the carbon deposit, you need to have a metal nanoparticle. Okay, so please remember, I will be using this metal nanoparticle for various applications, or I will tell you it several times. Normally, when a hydrocarbon comes, okay, so at a higher temperature, you see in the previous case, there is a high temperature. Okay, so you see this is maintained at 600, 650. There is a catalyst, which is nothing but the metallic nanoparticle. So once, okay, once the hydrocarbon comes and gets decomposed, then what happens is like the carbon gets interacted with the metal. So there is a metal hydride, metal carbide formation. then the hydrogen gets out. Okay, so in the form of a gaseous molecule. That's also the reason why here hydrogen was also taken. The reason that you don't want this deposit to be a pyrolytic deposit, because you know that, okay, in the reaction, if there is a product and if you are starting with the product, then the rate of the reaction will be very slow. That's how basically, like, you start with carbon and the hydrogen also, then the hydrocarbon gets decomposed, okay, so to give you carbon. So the carbon interacts with your metal, and the way carbon interacts with the metal, there can be a deposit of carbon by lifting the particle, or the way this is lifting the particle, or the way carbon gets settled at the bottom. Okay, so you have several possible ways in which now you can, I mean, like, the particle growth can be taking place. Then if you look at now the, I mean, the way in which it basically goes, the pyrolytic carbon, the hydrocarbon deposit you have. Okay, so now you look at now, this is the metal nanoparticle initially, and you are now decomposing your hydrocarbon. Now you see gradually there is a layer of carbon which is now depositing. Okay, and this is the first instance, but as it goes on, there is a pyrolytic deposit, and at one point you see that, okay, pyrolytic layers are forming. Still, the metal nanoparticle is intact, but at one point you see that here in this case, okay, the diameter is very small compared to the pore is very small compared to the actual diameter of the tube. Under those conditions, the tube loses its significance, and you basically call it like a fiber. That's how you see that it's actually the growth of the metal, vapor grown carbon fibers, okay, using ultra thin catalyst particles, okay, which are of the order of around 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 nanometers. It can be nickel, it can be cobalt, it can be copper, iron. These are the common metals which people use it. You see, in this case, actually, it is a carbon fiber, and which has no significance with respect to the pore. Then actually you can grow it on any of them. Like, this is actually I'm showing as an example on a metal fiber. Yeah, this is actually a metal fiber like Inconol. I have shown you here, somewhere it is written. This is actually, you can get now commercially available metal fibers. This is actually an Inconol, which is now has a typical, it's a nickel filter. Okay, and you have a little bit of chromium, you have nickel, and you have iron. So then what we do, like in this case, okay, so it was grown on this filter. So the idea is like, you want to have, this is a fine powder, no? Nobody wants to use this powder. Okay, carbon as a powder is not invited in any, not welcome in any industry. Especially chemical processing industry, they hate powder carbon. Okay, so that's how we were doing some kind of a reduction, large scale reaction. Now this is a metal. You can, what I'm telling is, you can grow the CNTs on anything. Only thing is, you need to have a metal nanoparticle. So now you see that the way it was grown here, since it contains, okay, just look at carefully, I mean, it will be of use to all of you. This is a metal filter. Okay, it contains nickel. So we want actually a nanoparticle of nickel for growing carbon. That's how initially we did the oxidation part. Then, but we don't need a nickel oxide, and we need nickel. So we reduced it at the end. Okay, so you see that we did the reduction. Then we have sent now the hydrocarbon. Okay, so this is a hydrocarbon at 655 sometime. Now you see that immediately the fibers, there is a carbon deposit. Okay, but one advantage is, like, this carbon is now very stable. Even if you do ultrasonication for 1 hour, and you cannot remove them. And this you can usually use it for adsorptions. Okay, so in fact, at one point we were trying to put it as the filter for air purifiers. Okay, so that, okay, because this is a highly macroscopic material, and easily molecules penetrate through. It doesn't offer any pressure drop. So you see now each fiber, this is a originally Inconol metal fiber. On that, now there is actually a carbon deposit. Okay, so now we can grow for some time. Now you see that the puffy material. Okay, so it actually shows that the SEM picture clearly confirms that there is actually a carbon deposit everywhere. One advantage here is, like to one of our friends, I answered chemical vapor deposition is actually an easiest one. And in fact, we have grown this one on a 5 by 5 inch wafer. You cannot say wafer, it's a fiber, okay, metal fiber of a 5 inch by 5 inch size, okay, or we cut it mainly in the circular fashion, okay, so with a typical radius of around 4 to 5 centimeters. You can grow depending on the setups you have. Okay, so then you see there is a continuous every fiber. You can see that it's a uniform deposit. That's one advantage with the CVD method. Okay, so but the unfortunate part is that the nickel particles are still present on the fibers. It's a tip growth mechanism. You can see that nickel particles are present. It's a complete coverage. It's a homogeneous carbon layer. Okay, and one advantage is even if you do ultrasonication, actually it ultrasonication, the carbon is only carbon weight loss. That means loosely held carbon is only 5%. It's only 5%. One advantage here is that now you have plenty of surface with the carbon. You can do for adsorptions, you can do for filtrations. Actually, you can propose isotherm models. Then you can do whatnot. Okay, so if there is carbon which is available, you clearly see that if you go on a closer look at, you see that this is a nickel nanoparticle which is around 20 nanometers. Okay, this is the carbon which is grown now. You see that beautifully. I think one can appreciate that this is basically a fiber where which is now typically controlled by this dark spot, which is nothing but the nickel. So that means you have, because initially we did oxidation and reduction, so the 20 nanometer nickel particle was present. Okay, so the metal particle, it's a tip growth mechanism. It growth, and you see that you have typical platelet structures of carbon. Then what you can do, actually immediately you can switch. Now you have carbons which are present, and you can actually look at if the compatibility can be made with respect to the composites. So the way the reinforcement composite model was proposed, because typically if you look at now the options you have, especially for the carbon nanofibers, you look at now this is a hollow core and this is a pyrolytic wall of a CNF, and the typical size is around 10 to 12 nanometers, and the thick pyrolytic carbon deposit is present. You may also have metal nanoparticles. That is one worry. Then what you have to do, typically you need to purify them. One main CNTs are grown only with I mean, mostly tons and tons of CNTs. Even in my lab itself, I may have around 100 kg of CNFs. So the way we, I mean, procure from somebody, they do chemical vapor deposition. So that's how basically it goes. Typically, the main advantage in this case is they have reasonable tensile, they have good tensile strength. They have good modulus values, and okay, and their thermal conductivity is also good, and they are cheaper compared to, I mean, carbon nanotubes. Main advantage is they are cheaper, they are reasonable. Okay, so main disadvantage is that they have a lot of defects. You need to purify them. You see that, okay, unless you purify them, you cannot use them for various. Especially if you look at the CNTs versus CNFs, this is like the density. And if you look at Young's modulus value, even CNF is inferior. Okay, so compared to CNT, because your CNT is some terapascal. Okay, so I mean, like the but fiber is only a kind of a gigapascal. The same thing also reflects in the case of tensile strength. Okay, so if you look at now, the CNT has a good tensile strength compared to I mean, like this is a single wall, this multi-wall, and fiber is very inferior. But still, fiber people use it because tons and tons of quantities you may want. I think this is one advantage which people want to use it. So the way this slide probably came, maybe there's a repetition. Okay, so 1 second. Yeah. Now the only worries we have are, like, you see that in this case you have now the metal nanoparticle, and there is also an amorphous deposit. So then you need to purify them. So one of the main problems, especially those who are familiar with the composite area, is like, okay, the nano reinforcements is all fine to talk, but main problem is that the purification. Then these are the very fine powders. Okay, so once you disperse them, they need to basically disperse properly. Once you dissolve it in your, say, resin, then you need to disperse them properly. So we have proposed actually a new way of purification. I think this was done by one of, I mean, the scientists of DRDO. This was our first PhD on mechanical aspects. The way purification of the CNT, CNFs go, I mean, as synthesized CNFs contain amorphous carbon, one worry. Then you have metal impurities, this is another worry. Then these impurities can also act as defect centers. Okay, so one main problem. Then what people have to do, you have to do selective oxidation by nitric acid or acid digestion. But the main problem is acid digestion is a very harsh environment. It also damages your graphitic carbon. See, I want to have graphitic nature. Why? Because graphite has to be compatible. Okay, so graphite is compatible with carbon, or graphitic carbon has to be there so that it will be compatible with my fiber. So mostly people do the oxidation in this by dissolving it in some kind of mineral acids. But that we observed that I can show you within 1 or 2 slides with the Raman spectrum. I think it is going to damage your carbon graphitic structure. Then in the second part, you can anneal it at very high temperatures. Okay, so maybe at 13, 14, 1500 degrees centigrade. Selective annealing you can do. This is one part. Here you're only removing basically the metal impurities. Then the next part comes, okay, if you remove the metal, now only carbon is full of carbon. Now then carbon has to have covalent functional groups. Unless you have functional groups, it will not be compatible with your epoxy group. Okay, so epoxy is the resin you have. So then what? It has a poor compatibility. So for transferring load from matrix to the CNF, okay, they should, they should bond well with the matrix. Okay, so the carbon has to be compatible with carbon. That's how you are doing here. Then the carbon has to be compatible with epoxy. So then you need to do the, selective functionalization. Then the main worry comes with respect to, the dispersion. Okay, because due to high surface area, CNFs and CNTs, they try to bundle. And once they bundle, it's like somewhere there is a loose patch. Okay, so it's like, okay, you are dissolving some powder in water and there are some lumps which doesn't dissolve properly. Then the segregation of CNTs and their stabilization in the polymer matrix is once again a challenge. So these are the issues you normally face whenever you want to handle the carbon. I mean, like maybe a detailed thing will be explained by, I think, Dr. Jain. But I think you see that for my application, I need to purify them, ensure that there is no metal. One possibility is like the metal dissolves it in metal dissolves in an acid. So this is one part. Then the second thing is like once after removing it, you need to show that there is a covalent functionalization. That means the compatibility has to be improved. Then the third part, okay, so the dispersion has to be ensured. But dispersion, mostly people go with, you cannot do magnetic stirring. The reason that tons and tons of quantities, I think you cannot really do with, like the mechanical stirring part, okay, so or magnetic stirring part. So these are the challenges you have. As such, to appreciate all of you, I can tell you that, okay, this is now your carbon. This carbon has to be converted to these groups. This is called the selective functionalization. Everyone does this one. There is no, everyone in, like even the literature, this is an open-ended literature. You can find thousands and thousands of papers on this functionalization. But the main problem is like here, the groups which are formed, you cannot control them. Why should I control? Because among all the groups you have, these are the groups which are compatible with, these are acidic groups. Okay, so these are carboxylic acid groups. They are the only groups compatible with your epoxy, because you convert them to an amide, so our amine linkage, that means that it's of no use for me. This is of no use, this is of no use, this is of no use. Okay, so that means I need to understand the surface chemistry of this one. You see, what I'm adding is only 0.5%, not more than that, or 1%. But for that, it has to be compatible. Otherwise, it's not serving the purpose. So for that, okay, people do several things, like you can do simple nitric acid, you can do peroxide, you can do sulfuric acid, whatnot. Mostly people go with nitric acid. Then you can classify them into chemical methods and physical methods. And compared to chemical methods, physical methods are good. The reason that chemical methods damage carbon, But physical methods, so they don't damage carbon. Okay, so that's one advantage. We can prove it easily with a spectroscopy that, okay, this is a pure carbon and this is after functionalization. Okay, that means like, okay, you have a lot of oxygen present. What we did at one point was we tried to give a new concept of how to do functionalization without damaging your graphitic network. Okay, so in fact, this was the kind of, this paper is actually around 18 or something impact factor right now. So, I mean, it was cited at least like hundreds of times because this is a new way of making. I'm not a mechanical engineer to, I mean, really understand, okay, so how mechanical properties are going to be affected. But in this area, not necessarily that you have to do only from the fiber part or only because epoxy is basically kind of a chemical. The only thing what you can do, a carbon fiber, it can be Kelvar or okay, so Kevlar or okay, so it can be T300 or whichever way. But then the main problem comes with respect to nano reinforcement where the compatibility is very, very poor. Okay, if the, as I've told you in the very second or third slide, if the compatibility is poor and it's not serving the purpose, that way actually you can propose this. This you can easily prove it. The whole idea of this one is that. So now you see that everyone takes carbon. Everyone treats with some kind of a nitric acid. Everyone thinks that every group is a carboxylic acid group, but it's impossible to have only carboxylic acid groups. You can have a variety of groups. Of that, some of them are carboxylic. Then you may ask a question, sir, why are you interested only in carboxylic acid? This group is the only group that's going to react with your epoxy. Okay, so you see that this group will be converted finally to some kind of an amine linkage. This amine is the only one that is going to react with your epoxy during the curing process. So that means that epoxy resin is a proprietary thing, carbon fiber is a proprietary thing. What else you can do to improve the strength? This is a small portion whichever you are adding. Okay, so in fact, in my chemistry department, if you say that I'm adding 0.5%, people don't I mean, they undermine you. Like, okay, they think that, yeah, 0.58%, what big difference you can observe it. Okay, so but you will see that, okay, it shows a lot of changes. Then this you can prove it with various spectroscopies, like, okay, so the XPS and all. Okay, so that, okay, you have a nitrogen which is present, because especially the main problem with infrared is like the carbon is a black powder, and infrared may not give you good results. Okay, so then you need some other techniques. This is like X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, which confirms the way the scheme was proposed. Okay, for the PhD work was, okay, so you have, this is a known matrix, you cannot do anything. This is a conventional carbon fiber reinforcement, like anything e-glass or, I mean, T300 fabric. Nothing much can be done, but the small portions, as I said, which we were adding, we everywhere we try to understand what is the role of it. It can be a carbon or it can be nano clay. Whenever you have e-glass, we were using nano clay. Whenever there is a carbon fabric, and we use CNT, CNF, something like this. And as I said, that this is now the common resin which people use everywhere. Then the way the process was done is like, okay, so you, I mean, like maybe next slide, yeah, this gives you an understanding. You just look at only for the carbon fibers. That means the small portion, whatever I'm adding now, like a 0.58%, 1%. Then you do, say, for example, this is what I was trying to tell you. This is your CNF, okay, or the CNT. Then you do functionalization. Then you convert it to some kind of an amine functional group. This happens only in the case of acidic groups. If you have some other groups, then this conversion cannot happen. Then this one, when it reacts with epoxy during the curing process, you see now the cross-linking is taking place. That means that if you have more amine functional groups, then the reaction will be very, very high. If the reaction is very high, then that will be an exothermic process. That means that we simply measured the heat by using the DSC, the differential scanning calorimetry. That means if this reaction, since this is exothermic, the more cross-linking it take place, that confirms that the more heat evolved in DSC, in the way it is shown, confirms that the more degree of cross-linking. If the degree of cross-linking is fine, for a neat resin, okay, so it's a fracture toughness value has to be more. And then if this value is good, then if you take it to a three-phase composite, okay, then the mechanical property should be good. This was the only idea we had when we proposed the whole PhD topic. Okay, as I said that I'm not a mechanical engineer. Okay, but this is out and out a proprietary item of a mechanical area. So then what we thought was, let us contribute from the fundamental side. Okay, so the heat evolved during this curing process. Okay, so I use a measure of the crosslink density. If the crosslink is good, more epoxy ring opens. Okay, more epoxy opening, more polymerization, more cross-linking. That means that more, I mean, kind of mechanical problem. So then the way we went with is like, okay, we had only DSC with us. Okay, so then with that we proposed. So the compositional variation, initially we took a control sample of 0.8%. Then slowly started, okay, because 60-40 is the known ratio of the volume fraction of fiber people add. This is a known value in the literature. Then actually we took the same portion. Then we started adding 0.58%, 0.25, like that, okay, the CNFs. Now you see that the more carbon you are adding, the area is going to be more and more. Once the area is more, the heat is going to be more and more. But it's not going to give you any benefit if you add more and more. There is an optimal value. I mean, just being a chemist, okay, so I should always, make you feel chemistry. Chemical smell. Okay, so this is the reaction we are talking. This is actually the epoxy which is known, which is commercially available, and you will be doing the polymerization process of this one. Okay, this is called the curing process. During this curing process, these two, amine has to open the ring. Then there has to be a bond formation. So for that, okay, so you are now how to convert it to amine. An epoxy group reacts with amine hydrogen. Okay, so then there is a crosslink that is taking place, and this is how the polymer network is going to form. Okay, so at every places you need to understand that. Then you need to have several instruments. Okay, because these are mostly present in mechanical departments. You need to have UTM basically to understand, okay, the fracture toughness. You need to also have UTM basically to study even for three phase, like let it be ILSS measurement or let it be the flexural or tensile strength. But the curing can be controlled with the DSC. Then you need to have the purification part with respect to TZA. You can study it. Then after functionalization, you can study the carbon, especially is a good one for Raman, and you can study with the Raman spectroscopy to understand, okay, these are the set of things which you can do. And SCM, TM come in the TM doesn't work in this case. SCM comes only after testing the sample. Okay, so it's not of use anything. So the way you know that tensile strength is nothing but, okay, between the two hooks you are putting your sample and you are pulling them in the opposite directions. Once you pull them, it's a load bearing thing. Okay, so once you pull them, you see that, okay, there is initially a necking taking place, and at one point the sample fails. At the failure, how much load it takes, okay, so that's the maximum load at failure. Okay, so that's what there is an ASTM standard for it. But for a flexural strength, okay, so you can actually see there is already a crack present on the material, and you see that how material withstands to, the deformation. This is how then you can also do the fracture toughness, the ability of a material which containing crack, and this is a 3-point bending. Okay, so you are bending it, and you have several layers. The layers can also skid one over the other one. This is how ILSS. Okay, these are the routine things which you need to do it to satisfy. Okay, so I can show you now. See the way to purify the CNTs. Okay, you see that the pristine CNT you have. Okay, so you see that. Okay, so you have typically like the G/D ratio of around 1.6. Once you treat them in some conditions like the helium, okay, so kind of things, okay, helium inert conditions, okay, so it forms the G/D is at least like 1.2, but this value will be very, very poor once you do the acid treatment. It may not go more than 1. Since this is G/D, that means graphitic ratio is more. So reasonable graphitic ratio, you see that it has to be maintained. That gives you the good. Then whatever groups that are formed, okay, so you can easily quantify them. Like maybe I can show you, I can go back to one of the slides, okay, where to impress you. Yeah, especially when you have this kind of functional groups, then you may ask a question, sir, I'm doing a treatment. How do I know that, okay, which treatment is going to be good for me? Okay, it's very simple. You see that you have formed several functional groups. These groups can be decomposed under inert conditions. There is something called a temperature programmed desorption or decomposition. That means you under inert conditions, you are decomposing these groups. Then what happens is all acid groups will be converted to carbon dioxide. all basic groups, like these are basic groups, they will be converted to carbon monoxide. Then you try to estimate how much carbon dioxide, how much carbon monoxide formed. That gives you an indication that, yeah, you may have acidic groups or you have predominantly basic groups, like that. So that's what we have. The new idea we have given was that one with respect to that. Okay, I can show you even very simple way. One, yeah. Now you look at now. You see that, okay, this is kind of don't worry about this treatment. Okay, then we did with some kind of, kind of an harsh H2O2 treatment, followed by ozone treatment. But those two gave you different results. You see that in the case of hydrogen peroxide, carbon monoxide is more compared to carbon dioxide. The ratio you look at now, carbon monoxide is more compared to carbon dioxide. Whereas in the case of another treatment, which gives you carbon dioxide more compared to, like the ratio wise, this is more, okay, compared to the other treatment. That means what? In this treatment, I get more acidic functional groups compared to this treatment. But to see, you are surprised, in both the cases, basic groups are normally more. But every paper you look at now, people simply report that, okay, so the carbon, they put an acid on the arrow and they simply represent COOH. That means what? Every treatment is not going to be fruitful. Only a fraction of the treatment is going to do the job. Now you try to optimize your treatment process where you get more carboxylic acid groups. Okay, so you see that in this case, the ratio, if you look at now 4.5, 1.5, so typically it is like 6, it is 3 plus 3, 6. Now we get nearly 40% of the acidic functional groups, but whereas in this case, it is only kind of a 25% of the acidic functional groups. Naturally speaking, this should give you more result because the DSE value should be more with respect to that. That's what exactly happened. You see, like now you look at now the kind of treatments we do, it really tells that, okay, so the kind of treatment you do, it clearly tells that the CO2 formed and BT surface area and the fracture toughness, all these things finally takes you to, that means acidic functional groups give you a better result. Then you can look at the failed samples. Okay, so then the failure, if you look at now, the one which is, let's see that this is non-treated sample, just added the reinforcement and that's it. You see that the layer by layer delamination taking place. But the moment you have functional groups, they are like a stitching taking place and the crack is now propagating along the, width of the sample. Okay, so but here there is a simple delamination. And the failed sample, if you look at now, okay, so the failed sample, the kind of a crack is propagating through the sample so that it's taking more load compared to other things. Then this was also basically stress strain curve also you can see. If you really want at what strain it failed, okay, you can see. And this is actually under tensile load, okay, so you can actually see that this is a non-compared, non-treated sample, just whatever CNF we got, we just added. But you see that they are loose patches. Okay, so the failed sample clearly shows that there is no bonding with respect to, but you see that the treated samples, okay, the functionalized and treated samples, it clearly shows that now the resin is basically sticking and it's wetting the surface, so that even if the failed samples, it clearly tells that there is a ductile like fracture which is taking place under these conditions. It clearly tells, you see that the whole story revolves around the 0.58% of the substance you have added, because rest of the things are not in your hands. The epoxy, even now DRDO cannot use another epoxy. In fact, right now I'm handing another project for this epoxy for DRDO, and I think there is no other way the another epoxy can be used. I think this is the proprietary, or this is the most widely used one. Then the carbon fabric, we have no big choice in it. So the way you can actually play with simple things is like, okay, you try to see how to improve the compatibility. You will be surprised that, this paper published in something called Composite Science and Technology, which is considered to be the high-end paper for any composite person working in the mechanical area, because it's a dream to publish in Composite Science and Technology. So I'm not claiming that, okay, we are kind of mechanical, but the understanding you can get, okay, the only, that's how the second slide I mentioned, no, like the second slide, okay, so every time, in fact, I gave in so many domains of mechanical, okay, so I always used to say that my understanding is how to ensure that, okay, so this kind of interaction, you can improve it by kind of some means, okay, so that's how basically you can do it, okay, so this is what was done for the failed samples. It clearly shows that, okay, so these are kind of a compatibility, you can improve it. The same thing you can also do with glass epoxy. And especially in the case of glass epoxy, people use, okay, so the clay, nano clay for adding. And the nano clay, you see that the intercalation and exfoliation, these are the two things which people do. They try to somehow kind of widen this gap between these two. Then they kind of add some organic moieties so that, okay, it will be compatible, because this is totally inorganic material and it is not compatible with your epoxy. Then polymer clay composites, okay, so you can do the same thing by giving some more understanding. Yeah, this is how the clay, natural clay, you can get it. One advantage with the natural clay is like Montmorillonite kind of a clay. You see that these cations are exchangeable. You can exchange them. Especially once you exchange them, then what you do, like, okay, so you try to kind of, this is how, yeah, you see that, okay, these are some kind of linkers, whichever you are adding, and you are going to exchange these cations so that you are kind of pillaring them in between them. That means you are widening them. Now this is an organic matrix. You have kind of a charge. Okay, so now this is compatible with your, yeah, I mean kind of a, this is compatible with your glass. Anyways, now this is compatible with your epoxy. Then taking clue from that. Okay, so you have several ways in which you can modify the clay. These are alkyl ammonium ions, and this is especially Montmorillonite clay, and this is organically modified clay. And you can do then you can, the spacing you can now commercially available, you can vary it. Okay, so the chemical reactions you can do. Then you see that when no clay, zero clay was added, and this was the fracture toughness of a glass epoxy material. But the moment you add 1%, 3%, 5%, you see that there is an optimal. Beyond that, okay, so it decreases the fracture toughness. Even the tensile strength also the same thing, up to some optimal 3 to 8% nano clay addition, it showed improvement. And beyond that, okay, so it decreased the value. It indicates that, okay, the I mean like the values are the addition has to be optimized. But to our, so this is once again the same story, the failed samples to confirm it. But to our surprise, okay, so when we went for impact studies, okay, that means how much load it can take ultimately before the failure. The 5-8% sample took under impact. The previous sample was under the tensile load. This was under impact study. Under the impact study, now you can clearly see that even this 5-8% sample took more load. Okay, so to our surprise. Okay, so then we understood, we wanted to understand what it happened. Okay, luckily at that time, I think I could send my student to various CT scan centers. And now you see that these are the samples which are failed samples. Okay, so this is with the simple, I mean like I mean the image, whatever you have in the front face. Okay, so the without anything, then you see that you're adding nano clay. This is 1%, this is 3%, and this 5%. Now you can see that this is a back face bending, because bullet comes, argument's sake, okay, the load comes from this direction. Then you see that the bending is in the backward direction. But you see that once you have nano clay addition of 1%, 3%, 5%, the back face bending decreased. And you see that, okay, this is one thing. You see that you are wearing a bulletproof, and argument's sake, a bullet strikes. Okay, so then if there is a back face bending, it can damage the structure, whatever you have. Like there is an armor tank, some enemy fired a bullet. Okay, so then if there is a back face bending, then immediately there are electronics and the property can be saved. Okay, so to ensure that the front face damage is more compared to the back face. Okay, so that's the understanding. The nanoclay addition improves now the I mean the decreases the back face bending, and by dissipating the energy in the front face. That's how the under impact study 5% gave better result compared to the tensile, where the 3%, okay, gave the better result. So this is kind of about composite, the way in which, okay, we can contribute. Okay, so I mean all of us are we don't have to really see, these are all interdisciplinary areas. We not necessarily that, okay, we have to have I mean kind of 100% understanding, but you can talk to, I mean like your colleagues in different departments, and you can come together. You see that when we proposed the idea, I mean to our PhD research proposal, this was the title we gave. This was the proposal we gave. We simply said that, okay, this was our schematic understanding at that point of time. We give the treatment to this. We try to optimize the treatment to ensure that we get, see, the maximum heat capacity or the heat evolved. That should confirm the cross-linking density. And if the cross-linking density is good, then the fracture toughness has to be good. And if the fracture toughness is good, then the mechanical properties have to be good. Exactly, it followed. But after 5 years, okay, so when we looked at back, okay, when we look back, we had only this picture in our mind. Okay, so this was the only scheme which we proposed. Okay, so in fact, this gave a very beautiful understanding. In fact, I have produced 3 PhDs, not on this topic, but on different aspects. And 2 of them registered in mechanical departments or engineering departments. And another person is doing a postdoc in high-end mechanical laboratory in Israel, in Weizmann University. Okay, so the whole idea we had was only to give the basic understanding. I never want to claim that, okay, so I'm kind of a person who understands, okay, except the basic definitions, what is this tensile, how the stress strain curve goes, what, I mean, other than the basics, I'm not aware of any of these engineering aspects. The way you can actually look at the way you can also propose this filtration. You can propose this one for filters, you can do adsorptions, you can do selective functionalization, then you can estimate point of zero charge. Depending on the domains you have, I think you can vary it in whichever way. Another aspect of it is the purification part, which normally people go the purification only an acid-based purification. So that is known to damage the graphitic carbon. So that is something which you can actually understand. The take-home message for this part can be that the purification, not necessarily that it has to be always acid digestion. Then you need to have a covalent linkage. Unless you have a covalent linkage, so I think you cannot really do epoxy ring opening. Okay, because the cross linking will be more once if you have an epoxy, and especially the epoxy ring opening will be facilitated by amine. And to get an amine group, you need to have a carboxylic acid group. So to start with, you try to get maximum carboxylic acid groups. There is a way to do it. There are several ways. I think fundamental science gives you a solution for many engineering approaches. Or if you're stuck with something, you can talk to any of the physics, chemistry walas. I think they will be able to suggest you kind of a thing. So this is one part which I think you can look at. Especially from the carbon point of view, I'm not going towards the application for various other aspects, which other colleagues will do it. But I think especially for the composite side, I think you can do the way in which you look at the carbon. You can grow the carbon by the chemical vapor deposition. This is the easiest one to do it in the lab. Or now you can also easily get it outside. Okay, the carbon available. But the only thing is powdered carbon is nobody wants. That's how we made this filter. This is like a gas filter, which actually, I mean, carbon has a surface area of around 285 in this case. Okay, so I think 285 is a good surface area. So then you understand this is the take-home message. Okay, you do optimize it to understand what are these groups, and then try to understand what are these groups which were formed during the course. That you can estimate it by using simple. I mean, in principle, your GC can also do gas chromatography, can also do these things, but still you can do with there is something called temperature program desorption. If you say that no, sir, I don't have this technique, you can do another ways also. Like 2 carbons, you treat it. Okay, there is carbon dioxide evolution that you can put it in some base like sodium hydroxide at some slightly higher temperature. Then do the back titration. That tells you that okay, one of the conditions, because CO2 is acidic, and so once you treat it with sodium hydroxide, it should give you sodium carbonate.